And we are live on Lots Property Investor. We bring the big names and we have the big fun on State of Origin night. How you going, Melissa Burtt? What's happening?
What's happening? It's 9 degrees in Tassie. We've had hail most of the day. It's great.
Wow. Hail most of the day. I thought that was last night, but has it continued from last night to today, has it?
Yeah, it has. It has. We've had some really wild weather, lots of rain, which we need because Tassie's really dry at the minute. The hailstorms.
No. I saw some pictures and it looked like it was snowing in Tassie, which isn't unheard of.
No, it's not. So, but yeah, really heavy dump of hail in lots of places today.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, but
it's hard.
That's a great little. It must be challenging potentially. With you might be getting sort of calls from tenants about that sort of thing. So is that throw a bit of a spanner in the works for your day when that thing happens?
Oh, luckily we didn't have any of that. The hail's quite small here. I know when you guys think about hail, you think of golf ball size, kind of really damaging, whacking around cars and things. We don't tend to have that. It's quite small, but luckily today, no concerns.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. So who tonight we have Melissa from Devonport, who's going to. I heard you on a smart property investment. I shouldn't mention the competition. That's all right. They're not really competitors. So many listeners out here. Listen to us and listen to them. Listen to everyone. Pizza and Property, all those guys. So I heard you on that podcast, and it was I learned a lot about what was going on in the Tassie market. So I thought it was interesting, and I thought we needed to get somebody on who knows it very well and has been doing it for some time, and just is a local sort of legend, local expert kind of thing. And so that you sort of were able to talk to that. So we're gonna go around the macro grounds of what the sort of bigger, larger regional sort of areas of Tassie are, just to give a very sort of helicopter view of that. Then we're going to dive into sort of Devonport, understand that, and then we're going to look at what are the sort of tips for new players investing in Tassie, because some things you mentioned in our pre-chat, I was like, I would have not known that had I not sort of had this conversation with you. So those are the kind of things that get me really excited. And I feel really privileged to be in this position to have interviews with people like yourself who have been in the industry and just sort of investing as well. So that's an overview for tonight's session.
Love it. Thank you, mate. It's going to be a good one. Well, because it's super exciting because Tassie is, I feel like, often overlooked, just in every single general way. People just forget about the little island that is not attached to us directly. But if we look at like history over the past 10 years, the Hobart is the largest capital growth out of all cities in Australia. Over the past 10 years, it has the highest amount of capital growth, and that's pretty interesting. But why is it rarely even talked about? Like, even when it was booming, people still weren't talking about it. So I want us to kind of unpack some of the more fundamentals and then look at all the other, what is a Devonport? What is a Burnie? What's Launceston? And what's up there up north? And why should we be interested? But I'm keen for it. And it's great that you're both Jeff's going to intro you soon, but a real estate agent and a property manager as well. So you see both sides. So I'm keen. I'm excited. How are you, Jeff? Yeah. You well, mate?
Yeah, very well. Very it's been a beautiful day on this in God's country, or down in Wollongong. So good fun, and just trying to understand the intricacies. That's a hard word to say, of actually picking up a patch of land in my own little pocket. So always fun, and sort of not necessarily learning, but just navigating the intricacies of each sort of local market, even though we bought her a couple of years ago as well. So fun time. So I'll introduce you, Melissa, and then we'll sort of jump straight into our first question. But who is Melissa? Good. For those who have, sorry, you go, Joe.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry, man. I'm here. So you are the director of LJ Hooker Devonport and a property consultant working at sort of, I think you focus mostly on the selling, but you help with property management, northwest coast of Tassie. So I looked up who you are, and you've worked in financial services for close to 10 years. You started off in financial planning, so you got that deep sort of grounding in financial sort of banking and finance. And I think that's a very interesting sort of mix that you've got, and a branch manager as well. And then you sort of shifted across and took on a more entrepreneurial sort of bent and worked for some small business and crafted your communication skills. So I think you've got a perfect mix there of somebody who understands the numbers or looks at the numbers, but also is really deep with forming and those relationships and connections. So yeah, and you also like a patch of swimming as well, I hear. Particularly on colder days.
Yeah. And all of that at the tender age of, not that old, surely. Yeah. Look, I've had a really interesting career right from, I started work at 16, which is not unusual down here in Tassie. Back then we didn't go past year 10 if we didn't have to. So started out in the workforce, went to uni as a mature age student and headed down the career path from there. And I've been really lucky in real estate. I mean, we started our company 5 years ago on the 1st of July. And 8 months after we started, COVID hit, which we thought would just be, that's it. We've put our houses on the line. What are we going to do? It was really quite overwhelming heading into that phase. But as you just mentioned, the market in Tasmania exploded. So we were very fortunate that we were here and ready to take that on and be really successful. I'd been in real estate a couple of years before that, and the market started to rise as soon as I stepped in the door, it felt like. So it's been a bit of a ride.
Yeah. Okay. So how has it changed over the past couple of years? Like, how have you felt? Maybe I'm going too deep straight to the good stuff. Maybe Jeff is going to yell at me. But yeah, what's it like? What's the difference of the market, 2 years ago that you're feeling it is now?
2 years ago, it was bedlam. It was absolutely bedlam in our market. Lots and lots of activity. Lots of people suddenly discovered Tasmania. I mean, we were selling properties sight unseen really regularly to people from the mainland, we call you guys. So mainlanders were coming down sight unseen. I need a house in Tassie. Give me the Tassie lifestyle. It was really fast moving. You could hardly put a property on the internet without being inundated with calls and offers. Now, I say to people, the market has changed in a really good way for me as a selling agent. I can actually create that relationship with people again. I've got time. The frenzy's gone, the urgency's gone, and I can actually be a sales agent. I can actually negotiate and I can actually make things happen for people. So while I've really appreciated the market that it's been, it's nicer working in this environment. There's still lots of activity, lots of things going on, but the urgency has just left and it's nicer. People have got opportunities to make really good decisions. And I think there's some opportunities out there for people still to get into the market and make some wise investments.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to unpack some of those sort of drivers behind that 2015, 2016, because when you were first starting, you would have seen a lot of that, having not seen it before. So you would have really been focusing on those things. I think you've got some key insights and an understanding as to what drove that. So then next time people are looking in Tassie or looking around the grounds at where they're going to park their next sort of $500,000, and maybe by the next time it could be close to $1 million. What that's going to look like, because I think that's critical to sort of understand those lessons that lead up to the next kind of thing. Because if you were having to compare it, to draw a barrier comparison across the Perth, if you were having those conversations with the people who saw that sort of happening in 2005, 2006, around happening, to sort of see what that was happening, to sort of take, and then sort of, I imagine people started to see that same sort of thing happen again in Perth. So history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme potentially. So, but before we get into the first question, I wanted, because there is a bit of a hot topic that happened today, and I won't necessarily ask you to comment on this, but I'll lead into a bit of a question that you are probably more comfortable with. We saw the CPI sort of data for May come out today at 4.0%. I don't know whether it was the headline or the core. So it's probably headline, which the difference is the core strips out all those sort of volatile items. And I just thought that's interesting because it was more than what I expected, and it was at 3.6 in April. So everybody's like hitting on interest rates are going to cut. Interest rates are going to cut. But how can when I say the RBA sort of look to cut rates when that happens? But why I sort of wanted to say that is, how are you sort of seeing the Tassie economy in general? And I know you're not an economist, so I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here. I did give you a bit of notice before the show. But how do you see the Tassie economy is performing at the moment, just to give people a really high macro level?
I think overall we're doing well. There's lots happening in Tassie, lots of infrastructure going on. Some of that's government driven, some of it private. lots and lots happening. We just had some data come out about Tassie. Our wage growth is really strong. We've got low unemployment. Most business owners that I talk to, the first thing we talk about is where are the staff? Where are we going to find these people? I've got a position vacant at the moment for a sales consultant, but most agencies would have positions available for property managers, alone in our industry staff. It's really, really difficult. So I think as a whole, Tasmania's economy is going really well. And I won't comment on probably why that is or the political structure of that, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of pressure point around mortgages yet. We're not seeing that on the ground. There's lots of talk about cost of living. I mean, everybody, that's so topical at the moment. Everybody's talking about cost of living, but we're still seeing lots of activity. There seems to be lots of business confidence as well, like from what I can see talking to people.
Yeah, interesting. Can you like paint the picture of like, so for someone, just pretend someone doesn't know about Tasmania, like, can you just explain? I mean, it sounds stupid because it's just a state in Australia, but I don't know, like what if we kind of were landed in Tasmania, what should we be expecting and looking for? Like, what's the demographic? What is the main industry leaders? What's driving things? Like, where's the value being created? And like, yeah, if I'm to drop down there, alien, what would I need to understand to kind of get my head around Tassie?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I say to people when they talk about Tassie is shush, don't tell anyone. We like it just the way it is. It is paradise down here.
No one was listening.
yeah, I know. It is absolute paradise down here. And I say that, hand on heart, I'm born and bred in Tassie, and I've had lots of opportunity to do other things elsewhere and just not taken them up. I think the really great thing about Tasmania is things are pretty relaxed. So I can get cranky coming to work because I have one set of traffic lights to get through, and if they're red, that's it. Day's ruined. and like, that is God honest truth. I have one set of traffic lights to get through. So that type of thing in Tassie is really different for people. Something else that's quite Tasmanian is, what do you mean you live half an hour away from your office? No one travels half an hour to get to work, particularly on the northwest coast. I live about 45 kilometres away, and my commute is half an hour. So people think about that type of thing very differently in Tasmania. It's a lifestyle down here, and that sounds really cliched, I know. But when you're driving around Tassie, you go around the corner anywhere along the northwest coast, and you've got these magnificent ocean views, and you come back towards Devonport of an evening, and you come over the hill and you see the spirit of Tasmania leaving port. It's amazing. We've got mountains only an hour away where no doubt there'll be snow in the next couple of days if you wanted to head there. Go to the beach. It's 2 minutes drive from where I am now. So Tasmania's got that very much different feel about it from anywhere else that I've been in Australia. And then within Tasmania, we've got these pockets of different lifestyle factor as well. I mean, Hobart being the capital city, very driven by tourism, and we've got lots of history down in Hobart, lots of industry down in Hobart. Everyone would know about the Tassie Devils coming in and Mac Point being on the agenda as well. So that's something really exciting. Down in Hobart at the moment in Bridgewater, they're building a new bridge across there. That's creating lots of potential for just faster movement in and out of the city. It's been a long time coming, but they're getting there.
I thought that's to the north of Hobart, isn't it?
I thought it would be better just to cut Bridgewater off entirely. I thought that was Tasmania's solution to Bridgewater.
Oh, is that the lower? Is that one of the potential not spots? Is it the rougher area?
There's hot spots and there's not spots of all of Tasmania. I got nothing against Bridgewater, but no, I lived in Tasmania probably collectively in my life about 8 years. So I hear what you're saying, because it is spectacularly beautiful. The lifestyle is unreal. And yeah, Bridgeport is a bit of a rougher place. It's known, but it is. There's a lot of commercial around there, and I imagine building the bridge is going to add. I think I remember driving past it. It was this rickety old bridge, and it's got like 2 lanes, and it just doesn't look like it's going to last very long. But I guess it's worked. So good to upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a drawbridge. I've never seen it act as a drawbridge, but it does actually have that ability to go up and down and let the yachts and things through. So a bit of a bottleneck, it always was, but it's moving along. Jump online and have a look at the progress they've made. It's phenomenal. And just the engineering to actually make that happen. I've been down to Hobart quite a few times, and watching that happen, I'm totally mind blown about how that's happening in Tasmania and the process of it. So that's really, really exciting for Tassie. But there's lots happening even in Launceston and some of the outer areas of Launceston. There's some industry wanting to come in, some private industry coming into Bill Bay. That's another port that we've got here. So that should create some employment. Tassie's pretty well known for the hydro scheme. So we've got all the hydro dams around the place. That can be topical at times, but
what does that do? What's the hydro scheme, and how does that kind of
so that obviously creates our electricity, which we send off to Victoria, I believe. I'm not real good at all that stuff, but as I understand it, we send it off to Victoria. The dams around Tasmania create tourism opportunities for us as well. I mean, if you drive down to Hobart over the Highland Lakes, I don't know whether anyone's ever done that. That's a spectacular drive. There's not much to do up there or see up there, but if you get the opportunity, ever do it, because it's the engineering that the hydro blokes did back in the day is mind-blowing as well. So Tassie's really lucky. We've got lots of entrepreneurs down here. You know, we've got catamaran builders. They go all around the world, those cats that are built here in Tasmania. We've got mining infrastructure in Burnie, so that's a really big thing as well. Some of that machinery gets sent all around the world. So lots happening. We've got lots of agriculture too. That's probably the thing for the northwest coast, is the agriculture and aquaculture. So salmon farming, which happens down the west coast and on the east coast and down south, and they actually get processed up here. So they transport live fish on trucks in big tanks to the processing facility here. That would have a couple of hundred employees out there, maybe more, processing those fish. And then we've got the fish food processing factory for that as well. So big industry can happen in Tassie, but mainly it's quite small. You know, lots of places employing a couple of hundred people. Devonport used to have a carpet factory where we would ship carpet all around the world. And I know that because that was my first job ever as the production and payroll clerk at the carpet factory. It was where I met my husband. That's very Tasmanian.
Wow. Yeah.
So we had that in East Devonport at the height when I was there in early 2000s. We would have been employing about 220 people. So in a small town, our population would have only been, at a guess, maybe 25,000 for a greater population. 200 people was pretty big. And Burnie would have had the pulp mill back then as well, which created a lot of employment. We had a pulp mill here at Wesley Vale, which is near Devonport, and that employed a lot of people. Yeah. Some of that industry's gone. That happens, of course, but agriculture's taken over.
Nice. And medical, is medical a big focus in Tasmania, or is that focused on Hobart? Or I remember there was a big thing where like I lived in the UK, and then they were like, oh, you know, Tasmania wants all the English people to, all the, you know, NHS nurses to come on over, and they're recruiting all these medical people. Is that true, or maybe I'm...
Yeah, so the government is still in very much recruitment phase for our health staff. We've got a major hospital in Hobart, which has had a revamp. That's been a long time project. Launceston's got a major general hospital. Burnie has one, and we have one here in Latrobe as well, which is a community hospital. We have got other ones all around the place, regional hospitals as well. So we're pretty well covered. They've just completed a ambulance superstation in Burnie. just to get more paramedics on the ground and be able to spread that out further. There's some mental health facilities on the agenda as well, all across Tasmania. Lots of things happening in the health space, but you're right, the staff.
And I think the other thing that Tassie, I mean, I don't know if it's not known for it, but I think when I think Tassie, I think there's the universities in Launceston. There's Tassie Uni. I'm just trying to. I should know.
UTAS, yeah. Mm-hmm.
UTAS, and just that sort of probably attracts a good. I don't know the exact numbers, but there'd be a good number of students that come into to sort of experience a different sort of a different environments when they're taking up their degrees and potentially international students. I don't know the numbers, but is that something that you're familiar with? Because it may be an opportunity for them to go there and then pick up roles and sort of satisfy visa requirements as well. So I think there's So what I'm sort of hearing though, and that's what we talk about sort of week in, week out mostly, is that there are a lot of sort of, when you're looking at the fundamentals, you consider things like your infrastructure, your sort of hospitals, your sort of your medical or hospital medical, then you look at all your other sort of things such as your education and your jobs and your largest sort of things. So I think that's really important, and it sort of shows that the things that you've talked about there, we haven't even asked you, but those are the things you've hit on. So I think that's really kind of pivotal and shows the type of things that people can look at. What I was interested to know about. So we touched on a lot on Hobart and what sort of Hobart has plenty. Hobart population has absolutely sort of grown. It's almost doubled in the last sort of from 2006 to 2021. The area that I found, or the city, is Launceston. So what can you sort of say about what's happening in Launceston? Because that's also growing as well in terms of its population and so what's happening in Launceston? Can you sort of talk to?
Yeah, and Launceston is pretty much smack bang in the middle of the state, if you want to think about that. Not a beachside town. There's a river. Tamar River goes into there. Another really picturesque spot. Again, there's some industry around Launceston, the uni, as you mentioned, and then within that region of Launceston, there's lots of things you can get involved in. So I mentioned Bell Bay. There's some stuff happening there at Bell Bay. You've got, dare I say it, talk of new prison being built, stuff like that. Not far away from Launceston. There's a few things happening in that region as well. It's close to the agriculture centre. It's only an hour away from the northwest coast. So for anybody needing freight from the Spirit of Tasmania into Launceston, that works pretty well. You've got it used to be called Glaxo, and the names just escape me at the moment, but they are the poppy production company. So poppies are grown in Tasmania very successfully, and then they are processed there. So that would be employing a lot of people as well. And the hospital system there would be trying to bring in lots of staff. And it's a good little city, right by the river. It's got some fabulous restaurants if anyone's in for that too. But it's probably still in that affordable phase for investors.
That's what I was gonna ask. Is like, what's the price? Like, what's the entry level? Like, what should we be kind of thinking about price wise for some of these areas? For some of these areas.
I can't speak too much about Launceston because it's not
something
that I follow, but we can talk closer about that in my patch. All along the northwest coast. So the northwest coast runs from just a little bit further out from Devonport, and when people talk about the northwest of Tassie, it actually encompasses a lot of the west coast as well, where there's not a lot of population, and that's where our mining predominantly is down there as well. But I'll just talk about the actual part of Tasmania in the cradle bit, so the top part of the love heart.
Okay.
If you want to think about an entry level there, I mean, we're looking at properties at the moment that you could purchase and put a tenant in tomorrow at $400,000 would be, a pretty good price point.
Wow, that's unreal. And what would the rent be on that? Like, what kind of rent?
So if that's a 3-bed, 1 bath, where it's somewhere around $420 to $440 a week is realistic. We could
5.4% yield.
Yeah, absolutely. We could potentially push it higher, just depending on the demand at the time. So just thinking about my own portfolio, we've got some of those 3-bed, 1-baths at $450 a week.
50, okay.
Yeah.
Just
that's
a 3-bed
interesting.
one.
You just hit on your kind of portfolio. When you're looking, I'm going a little bit off track here, but I think I'd like to touch on the interesting thread I just picked up potentially. When you're selecting properties to buy in Tassie or around the place, what do you sort of look at in your investing?
I mean, looking at one right now at the moment. I've seen a real shift towards, the 3-bed, 1-bath is always going to be the mainstay. I think that's always going to be pretty easy to tenant out. Maybe it's a consequence of COVID, but and I'll talk about this a little bit later on if you give me an opportunity, but the amount of tenants that we see that need to go from a 3-bed, 1-bath family home and they're separating. So we've got some of that happening like everywhere in Australia. And we suddenly need 4-bedroom homes because we're combining families, and that's happening a lot more often. So at the moment, I'm looking more for a 4-bedroom house. I just think there's opportunity there. The other side of that is, and we don't have a lot of that here in Tassie, the other side of that is we probably need more 2-bedrooms, 1-bedrooms if planning schemes would allow it, but that's difficult. But just people are living on their own a lot more.
That's so interesting, because this is one of the things that I talk to investors every day, and then I'm like, great, what are you kind of looking for? Well, it has to be a 4-bed, 2-bath, house that's got all the amenity. And I'm like, yeah, but is that what the demographic wants? Like what you're saying is you're seeing a lot of families separate and split up, which means that they don't necessarily need a 4-bed, 2-bath, and they don't need to spend that extra, it's $400 a week, $450 a week, or it'll go up to $550 a week. So as an investor, you've got to kind of take that mental, no, I live in a 4-bed, 2-bath because I've got a family of, 3, 4, or 5, but doesn't mean that that's the best asset to be buying in that area, because that's not what the demographics used to, and what it's not. Like Launceston is one of the oldest, like an incredibly old town, and the houses weren't built like that. Actually, that's a good question. Is like, what are the quality? Like, what should we expect from the houses? Are there super duper old ones? Is there a whole heap of new stock? Is it all 70s, 80s, 90s? Like, what should we be kind of thinking from a property standpoint? Obviously, you can't talk to all of Tasmania, but like your kind of patch, what's a typical asset?
Yeah, it's generally pretty the same across Tasmania though. Right. Lots of mid-century stuff. So 50s is still pretty mainstay. So built in the 50s, 60s, lots of 70s, 80s stuff as well. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with those. I like them. And then you've got the new builds as well. So for a long time, there wasn't a lot happening in Tassie. There was the odd house being built here and there, but now they're everywhere. New houses are everywhere. But most of the ones that we had open on the weekend would have been older style homes. And one of those was a 4-bedder and the others were 3-bedders. So that's still the main thing. But what you're really looking at there, particularly the mid-century stuff, is weatherboard. May or may not have had any updates inside, but that's okay. The kitchens were okay back then. They've got a sink, they've got a stove. It's great. Yeah. And also I'll go back a step. Also what I'm looking for at the moment as an investor is something that's already tenanted.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting.
So you don't, because we kind of have,
it's a hard ask.
This comes up quite regularly. I would, the tenanted properties tend to, there's some opportunity there potentially, particularly if they're sort of tenanted for the next 10 to 11 or whatever it is, like if it's a longer lease before the next thing comes up, because then you've almost ruled out your owner occupiers. So then you can potentially pick up. Is that your line of thinking? Are we thinking the same thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they are out there. So we've got investors at the moment in our property management department here who are looking to exit for various reasons. Some of them have held them for a long time and have seen that the peak happened and, okay, let's go. I've made my money and it's time to do something else. Some of them are going, oh, I bought it at the height and now you're telling me that next tenant I put in, I may not get that rent and my mortgage payments have gone up. So little bit there happening as well. And I don't think that's a pain point. I think that's just I want to do something different with my money at this point. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking at things that are tenanted for that very reason. So at the moment with the stamp duty relief that's just been announced in Tasmania, and we've got the My Home program as well.
Well, that's one of the interesting things. Like South Australia, for instance, goes up to $600,000, and I'm seeing a big difference of properties that are just getting stuck at $600,000, and they're not kind of breaking through. What's that price range like? Are you seeing that in Tasmania, and what is that kind of price range?
Yeah, the difficulty with Tasmania is the price range is fine. Where they put that limit on is fine, but it's the serviceability for our first home buyers to actually get a mortgage at that point. Mm-hmm. You have to understand that Tasmania doesn't have the wages like interstate counterparts do. Trade-off is we've got a better lifestyle, I think. But yeah, it's the serviceability of the loans. So yeah, there's those points in all of those programs, the stamp duty relief and the My Home Share program. It's great if the first home buyers can get in at that price point, but it'll all come down to serviceability.
Yeah, which you would know quite well, having worked in sort of financial services for close to 10 years. Joe, we forgot our first sponsor, mate. So we better run to that, and then we'll sort of dive into Devonport, I reckon.
Let's run away. Let's do it.
Hi all, I've got a big problem. This is the Policey Property weekly sponsorship ad. Except today, I've got nothing to sell, and this is because of you. Due to all your kind words, comments, amazing feedback, and sincere compliments about my newly released commercial property investment course, the Commercial Property Institute, I realised today that due to the Facebook algorithm, many of you, in fact, the majority of you, still may not have heard about this yet. So I'm going to do 3 things that no other course provider would even dare to do. Let's start with number 1. I've taken out 5 lessons of the course and put them in the link that's being dropped into the chat right now. This way you can see the value in the course, and you can see the production, and you can see for yourself the depth of the insight that we dive into. Every other course provider hides everything behind a paywall, and you only find out if it's valuable or not when it's too late. Not me, you're going to see 5 sneak peek lessons from the course from which you can make an informed decision about whether this is for you or not. Now, number 2. To further prove to you that this course will transform you from being a total beginner into an elite commercial property investor, I'm going to show you a picture of me before I discovered commercial property investing. And now, after I've discovered commercial property investing. Alright, you finally got your Steve without a beard shot, so it's time to get serious. Let's talk about number 3. And this will leave you without any doubts. Everything I know about commercial property is in this course. Every tool that we use at Policey Property is in the course, and it's delivered in a learn at your own pace online course at $4,997. But you're not going to pay that. In fact, you're not going to pay a cent if you're quick. I've decided to extend the free offer to OzProp Investors Group until the end of June. That's right, no cost, no credit card, lifetime access until the end of June. All you have to do is click the second link here in the chat, and it'll take you to the page where people normally pay $4,997 for it. At this page, type in the discount code OZPROP and instantly get the Commercial Property Institute course for free. No catches, no gimmicks, just a limited time only offer. So click the link right now and get your instant access free. Thanks again for the amazing feedback, and I look forward to seeing thousands of commercial property moguls in the near future. Cheers, guys.
There you go. That was No, you're on mute, mate. You're on bloody mute. So whatever you said, we didn't get any of it. You're still on mute.
Oh,
go on.
I shouldn't.
You're off mute now, mate.
Okay. No, so it's end of financial year. So that's the last week. So get in on that. But have you found that people have started? Has there been more urgency? This is an interesting question that you may be seeing. Are you getting more urgency in people wanting to sell or do certain things with their property leading up to that EOFY end of financial year?
Maintenance. There's some maintenance on my property. Yeah. Can I get that bill before the end of financial year? Actually, the biggest discussion I've had around financial year in the last little while is those investors that are wanting to exit. And I'm just saying, go back and talk to your accountant. Are we doing it now? Your contract date is the date that they're all going to be looking at. So that's created some pipeline, I guess, for my business into July and August, where we'll have some properties coming on the market. That's probably the big thing that you have to think about when you're selling a property, is that side of the story for your owner. Don't let them get caught out with those kind of really pertinent dates. For our owners, our landlords, in Tassie we can still call them landlords. It's more about, can I get that maintenance done and pay for it before the end of June?
Don't call them landlords. They changed in Victoria. The place parts of the world. I don't know.
What do we call
them? It's
like
owners, I think they're called these days. Yeah.
They're called owners.
Rental providers.
Yeah.
Suckers.
Hey. So a lot of people have asked to join. So you have a big following, Melissa. So I just let some people in and gave them the YouTube. But people, drop your questions and comments, and we will get to as many of those as we can. So I wanted to hear, though, about Devonport. So give us a lay of the land. What's going on? What are the sort of pockets that we need to? Should we bring a map up, Joe, so we can?
Yeah, do that.
Yeah. Because I like to sort of think about what I'm talking about. So what I'm hearing about.
Good.
So
think about what you're talking.
So bring it up. But overall, what do you sort of see as the key sort of things happening around Devonport and surrounds?
We've had a really interesting few years here in Devonport with lots going on. I think most people would know the Spirit of Tasmania docks here in Devonport, and has done for quite some time. Back when I was buying my first property, my first marital home in 2001, the market did pretty much what it's just done recently as well, just went phenomenal. And a lot of people say, oh, that's because the Spirit of Tasmania started coming in from Sydney. It was almost like Sydney had never heard of us, and the Spirit of Tasmania was coming in, and boom, it went. I don't think that was it at all, my personal opinion. So we're really lucky that we've got the spirits coming in, and we've got new spirits on the way. They've actually hit the water. One of them has hit the water, which is really exciting. They're being built elsewhere, but they are coming. So that will increase our capacity for freight and passenger services into Devonport.
Yep.
But it's actually really nice to have the Spirit of Tasmania down there in Devonport. If you drive down to the city now, you literally come down the hill into the main centre, and the Spirit of Tasmania is there. And sometimes it's got fairy lights on the top of it, and it's just really beautiful. So we're lucky we've got that, and we've got a couple of other freight companies that come in and out of the port as well. And Cement Australia has a production site not far away from here, and they employ a lot of people, and they actually ship. So they bring the cement, and I'm really clueless with all this stuff, and my son actually worked at the place, so I should know more. But they put the cement on the trains and bring it down to the port, and it goes into silos and then onto the ship, and off it goes. So Devonport's lucky that we've got that. We've got a really forward-thinking council as well. So a few years ago, they developed the Living City Plan just to reinvigorate Devonport, because what's happening is the Spirit of Tasmania docks on the eastern side of the river, and anybody coming in as a tourist would get off the boat and follow the signs to Launceston, maybe Cradle Mountain, although Cradle Mountain tended to be the last stop on their Tassie tour. So they'd come back down through that way. So Living City was designed for Devonport, and what that meant was we've got a brand new Novotel hotel down on the waterfront, which looks phenomenal and has provided lots of employment and lots of opportunity. So that's really nice. So you can see there the main part of Devonport is on the western side of the river, and the CBD is down on the river as well. And then we've got
all of this area gets attention, and then people just move on because they're like, okay, that's all I need to see. They don't cross over to this side of the river to check it out.
No, they didn't. But that's better now that we've got the Living City and people are hanging around. Tourism is pretty big on the northwest coast, so we've just got to make sure.
I was going to say that actually, that's the thing that we didn't really touch on in the industries, like tourism in Tassie. You've got a lot of adventure and a lot of sort of people. You've got something for everyone. You've got things such as sort of Fresnay, which is probably a little bit from Devonport, but I'm sure you've got massive sort of attractions, and you've got that King Island as well, which I don't know, can you get to King Island from Devonport, or how does that sort of, I imagine, stop off?
You could on a boat if you were keen, but most people fly.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, there's all that sort of, whether you've got adventure, whether you want to go and do some hiking, you're more leisure focused, you've got all that, and you've got quite a diversified economy there by the looks of it. What's the different industries there, Joe? You've got heaps of them.
Mountain biking is huge as well. Here now, we've got lots of mountain bike stuff happening, lots of trails up through the Kentish region, which is only half an hour from here. And at Latrobe as well, they've got a really good mountain bike trail running through there.
Great. So take us through the pockets of Devonport. Like, so you've got East Devonport, which is mostly looks sort of largely commercial, where sort of, and your residential looks like the Devonport, the eastern side of the river, as you mentioned. Sorry, the west, is it east and west?
Yeah, western side. So East Devonport locally had a stigma.
Yep, interesting.
I mean, I've grown up in the area. In the 80s, East Devonport had quite a stigma attached to it. And if you talk to people now down the street, say if you came over from Sydney and said, "Oh, I'm looking to buy in the area," they go, "Oh, I don't buy in East Devonport." Don't do that. But it's a very changed neighbourhood. It's not like it used to be. I mean, I feel like every town or community has that part that maybe looked down upon, but East Devonport is not that. I wish I'd bought properties in East Devonport, or more properties, lots of them, 4 or 5 years ago. I was selling 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom mid-centuries for about 180,000.
Wow.
Should have bought 5 of them, because now I'd be selling them for 400. Anyway, that's hindsight, isn't it? But East Devonport, don't discount it. I will say that. Then you've got, still on that side of the river, Ambleside, which is a really nice part. There's some really great views from Ambleside. That looks back towards the south, and you're on a hill. So if you head south and across where the highway is there, on the other side of the highway, that's Ambleside. And that travels around to Latrobe, which is another township that we've got. So follow the river around. And Latrobe is a really good spot. That's been a real hot spot lately. Was one of the biggest and fastest growing municipalities. I shouldn't say biggest, sorry. It was one of the fastest growing municipalities there for a while. This is all new that you're looking at now. That is all new in Latrobe, all new build.
That's probably
so that was a little hot spot. And the hospital's there as well. So for an investor, that's a good one to look at.
So what kind of price range should we expect from like these areas?
Yeah. So at the moment, I've got a 2-bedroom unit, quite nice, only 12 years old, in that new part of Latrobe. That's on the market. It offers over 440,000. And yield.
What would you take?
No, it's offers over, though. No?
Offers over. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Can we hit on the offers over thing? Because that's a thing that we spoke about in the pre-chat, that in Tasmania you can market it as offers over instead of. I'm sure I've seen that in other states, though, haven't you?
You may have. Some states can't do it. We've been doing it.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But this is the biggest thing I think that investors need to kind of get over, is like what the listing price the agent has put on. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's what it's worth. So whatever the agent thinks it's worth is not, it doesn't really matter. It's like you have to work out your own value, because what you see out there in the market, agents are underquoting, and then there are other ones that are like going fair market, and then there are others that are going like above for some silly reason. And you guys as an investor need to work out, okay, where I know the market so well that yes, she's, it's listed on offers for over 440. You know what? 440 is a really good buy. I'm going to try and get it for 440. If you're in, Perth or South Australia, it'll be offers over 440 and it'll go for, 560 or something like that.
800 or something, yeah.
Yeah, and there was lots of discussion about that when the market was really hot down in Hobart in particular. People were saying that's just ridiculous. People are coming in and offering an amazing amount over the asking price. It's all about supply and demand. We all know that. We're all smart enough to know it's about supply and demand. And Joe, you are correct. You can offer whatever you like as a buyer. You don't have to offer over the asking price if you don't see value in that.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that. You know, you've only got to look on agents' Facebook pages every day of the week. Price reduction, price adjustment, price improvement. Don't know who that is an improvement for, but anyway.
bit of a marketing term, perhaps. I mean,
maybe. I mean, we've used offers over since 2017. So not long after I started in real estate, my business partner keeps stats every week. Like, he's just phenomenal at it. And he said to me, as soon as I walked in the door to start my brand new job, the market's about to turn and we're going to start using offers over as a pricing strategy. And we've done it ever since then, and it's served us really well.
Okay. What is it about that? What is it about that offers over that changes?
Yeah, why does that work?
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, and the reason we use it in our business, it works if you put the property on the market value. It's not about underquoting and cheating people to come in and have a look at the property. You have to have a discussion with your vendor around, this is what I think the fair market value is, and this is what we're going to go on the market at. And then if we get enough competition from interested parties, that's when we can expect offers to come in over the asking price. But the mistake I see people make is, I'd like to use your offers over pricing, but I want to start it at something that's overinflated. It's never going to work. You're just not going to get the buyers in. With all of the transparency now around information available on properties, buyers are smart. Let's not underestimate buyers. They know what is fair market and they know what is overpriced, and you just got to be really transparent about it, I think. And we always are in our business. So it doesn't matter what market you're in, offers over works. It doesn't have to be in a hot market or a rising market, because at the moment I don't believe we are in a rising market. We're in a balanced market, but we're still selling over the asking price.
Interesting. I was just having a quick look, and I shouldn't have been looking. I should have been focusing. But I was looking at East Devonport. I was like, yeah, that'd be. I mean, I haven't been to the area, which is something I think from any property I buy personally and whoever, I'm going to be going and getting to the area, because yes, it looks great in the data. Or I'm not saying East Devonport looks great, but the price bracket looks affordable, and the yield's sort of still that sort of high 4s, low 5%. So to me, it's quite appealing. Whereas I looked at those other areas you mentioned, and of course it was more expensive in those areas because the property was probably newer. But I suppose it then comes down to what your brief you're looking at. What I wanted to ask though as well, or what I was interested to know, is what are sort of vacancy rates? Because we can look at data online and see those, but vacancy rates and what sort of other days on market, what are you sort of seeing with those sort of metrics based on your experience?
Yeah, not that long ago, our days on market were, well, even talk about it. You've got a vacant property, just put someone in there. There's plenty of them there. Choose one. There's so many to choose from. It was, there was not very many properties available for tenants to select from. Yep. That has changed a little bit, but I don't want that to scare people off. Please still come and invest in Devonport.
Just a normal market, I think.
Yeah, it's just a normal market at the moment. What I will say is, I know you'd like to get a really high rent for your property sometimes, or the rent that will cover your mortgage repayments. But if you are vacant for 2 weeks, it's going to take you a long time to pick that up. So if I've told you to put it at 430 and you've pushed it to 460 and you're vacant for 2 weeks, and then you've got to drop it back down to my 430 or 440 recommendation, just take the advice that your property managers are giving you, because we're on the ground. We've got lots of applicants at the moment, but affordability is our biggest struggle. Like I said earlier, the wages in Tassie just as high as elsewhere.
So that's a great little nugget there, because Sydney's you can't buy a unit for $1 million. Well, you can, but you can't buy a house for $1 million. So if you're going to Tasmania looking to spend $800,000-900,000 as an investment property, it's what you're kind of alluding to is that the top end, it sounds like the top end of town is not an like you shouldn't be thinking about it from an investment perspective, but the bottom end of town, if you're getting these more affordable, everyday Aussie, like it kind of like what I was saying about fitting your demographic to the asset type, you're going to be all right. If you get a 3-bed, 1-bath, 4-bed, 2-bath, that's not extravagant, asking for $650 a week rent, you're going to be better served. Is that kind of what you're saying?
If you've got 800,000 or 900,000 to invest in Devonport, buy two.
Buy two, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
good.
Because it looks like you could actually pay that much, but you're sort of buying it. You're really limiting the people that are going to sort of go in and draw and look to see if capital growth particularly is important. And I imagine the rent on some of that would probably go for maybe 650, 700. Like you wouldn't get anywhere near much of a rental return on that.
No, you're right. I mean, they're out there. We see them advertised, but they're advertised for long periods of time. So that's a big vacant property sitting there. That's just going to take you too long to catch that back up. And do we have the demographic for that? No, we don't. We don't have the demographic to pay the $650, $700 a week rent. That's not Tassie. It's not. Well, it might be some parts of Tassie, but it's not my part of Tassie.
Yeah, and I think that's really critical because I see it in every market. I see it right now. There's a price point in my area. If you start to go above $1 million or 1.1, 1.2, you start to see things really. They sit there on the market selling for. They take 60, 70 days, and you see price reductions as you're sort of seeing. So yes, there is markets that are selling well, but and even I saw a post the other day about a market in Ipswich about renting, and they were saying it's been listed for a couple of weeks and they're not getting the applications. Like I thought, how much that my
the rent?
I think it was like $560 or something, and people were saying, well, that's a bit above what the area rents for, and similar to what you're saying, and they're just saying, well, aren't we in a rental crisis? And that's the sort of thing that people need to factor in.
Yeah, I've been saying for quite some time, we don't have a rental crisis. We've got an affordability crisis.
Well, yeah, you can kind of see that in the data here. This is from CoreLogic, and it's talking about the percentiles of values of quarterly changes in the value. So what you can see is the bottom end of town in most markets is where all the action is. It's that affordability piece. So actually what's interesting is that's not the case for Darwin or for ACT. It's actually the top end, the 25% top percent.
Probably because there's a lot of units in both ACT and Darwin, Joe. Because this is dwellings, not necessarily houses. So I imagine ACT, you've got hundreds of units, new units being brought on the market, which is probably and similar situation, I believe, in Darwin. But in Hobart, look at that, 0.3 across the board. So you're very consistent and steady. So it's just interesting because you hear anecdotally, people saying, oh, Tassie's into sleep mode. But I don't know, is that actually the case based on what we're seeing there? Like it's not going at 3 or 4% per quarter or 3 or 4% per month as in Perth. But yeah, there's maybe a little bit of some green shoots there. Because you based on what we spoke about before the show, what are you seeing currently at a lot of your home opens? You're seeing some interest.
So we had 5 open on the weekend in our little patch here, and we had 58 groups, I think, through those openings. One of them had 28 groups of people through. So we nearly had to have a stop and go man at the front door. That's almost like COVID times for us. I mean, we had a property on the market during COVID when we had to only have 5 people in a house at a time. It took us 3 hours to get everyone through because they were lined up down the street, 100 plus people wanting to look in. Generally, if we've got 8 to 10 people at an open home, we're really happy with that result. So the numbers on the weekend, I mean, one had only 3 through it, but that's okay, and one had 28. But there's good activity.
What was the difference?
There's really good activity, and it's investors and it's first home buyers.
Sorry, cut out there.
Okay, so the one that had 28 groups of people through it was priced at offers over $350, and cute little place built in the, I believe, 1890s or something. So an older style home, but at that price point, everyone was interested. The one I had 3 at was a tenanted unit. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
And then another property that we had 12 groups through, I think. Yeah. So lots of activity, heaps happening. The first home buyers are definitely back on in Tassie. There's definitely opportunity there for them. And we are an ageing demographic in Tasmania as well. So there's a little bit of downsizing going on. So I don't need this big house anymore. Can you just sell me something a bit smaller? Sure.
So what does an ageing demographic actually mean?
Yeah, so it means we've got a greater proportion of retirement age people. Now, some of that I believe, and this is really only my personal opinion on why this happens, but Tasmania for such a long time had not much going on. So if you were a young person coming out of high school in my age bracket and you wanted to do something really phenomenal as a career, you would have to move. You'd have to go to the mainland and do it.
Had like a brain drain type of situation there.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for some of our tradespeople, and that still is a little bit, we're getting better with our tradespeople, paying them down here. If you'd done a trade here and you wanted to earn the big bucks, you'd have to go to WA or somewhere like that. So we just became a bit of a retirement state. Now, that has changed. I will say that there's a lot more stuff happening in Tasmania that's keeping our younger people here, which is good. And I think the government's doing a great job at the infrastructure and stuff they've got happening, which could be helping. But again, that's personal opinion as well. So the ageing demographic is still there, though. So we've got all these people who have retired, probably have owned their home, because our home ownership length of time that you own your home for is longer in Tasmania. You know, people talk about people move every 7 or so years. In Tasmania, it's longer. We don't move very often. Because why would you? We live in the best place anyway. Why do you want to leave? Yeah, so there's a little bit of that happening too. And you'll hear that a bit in the media around our health system and about our ageing demographic. But I feel it's getting better.
Yeah, my experience, I was in Tasmania from year 7 to year 10 for a period of time, and that's where it was a challenge for me when I was just growing up and like wanting to experience and do things. And it was Hobart was quite small and challenging. There's one cinema, and there wasn't really much. There wasn't much to do, and my first job was laying carpet for $100 a day, which was pretty good. I didn't have to. I just lifted the dirty carpet out, lifted the new carpet in. It's a great job, fun. But I did feel that there wasn't that much. But this was a while ago, so I don't know how that has changed. I haven't really kept up too much with Tasmania, but yeah, it's interesting that you say that. But I have heard a lot about nursing and hospital upgrades and people actually moving deliberately too, because it is spectacular. Like I found my experience with Tasmania was very much, if I was having, like new kids, like the best place. There's so much nature, there's so much outdoors. You can just let your kid run wild and have an amazing time. And then older age, you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, spectacular views, spectacular food. It is, it's amazing. If we can just somehow get that middle age, then it would be ideal. But
it sounds like there is, Joe. It sounds like they're starting to sort of open up more industries.
Sounds like it's getting there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. My son's just completed his apprenticeship as a heavy diesel fitter, so diesel mechanic, I like to call him. Finished in January. He's picked up a really great job down here. He hasn't gone off to the mines. He hasn't felt the need to. Most of his mates are in the same boat. There's been lots of apprenticeships available down here in Tasmania as well. The building industry helped that over the last few years. The government incentive to buy land and build, unbelievable for our area. Latrobe that we looked at a minute ago, I lived in Latrobe for a minute or two while all that was happening, and the construction happening around the place was every day. You'd go down, there's a new house. Like it was really amazing. So we've been really lucky in that respect that in a close environment, a close community, we can have those things happen. And I don't know, it feels like we're on a different trajectory.
Yeah. What before we go to our last sponsor, I wanted to know, and this is not a 2-sentence or 2-word answer. I want to know, because we've alluded to it and spoken to it, but what do you feel drove that? Because you're right at the coalface when this happened. What drove that last sort of 2015, sort of 2016 kind of really boom? Was it purely affordability and investors getting in, or what was the catalyst for that? And what should people look out for?
Definitely affordability. Yeah, okay. I would say back then, so the data that I've got, hang on, just give me 1 second. Again, supply and demand. If I go back to the data that we kept in September of 2017 in Devonport, there was 170 properties on the market.
Yep.
Wow.
In July of 18, it started to drop pretty quickly and the prices started to go. So that says to me it was just all about affordability. By July 18, we'd hit 97. So we were below 100 properties on the market in Devonport, and it just kept going down and down and down and down, but prices kept going up. The lowest we got to was in May 21. There was 29 houses, and only houses, I'm not talking dwellings, but 29 houses available at May 21. So that's when we really saw things were that really hectic part of the market from then on in. But I think it was just purely affordability. You could buy a really great home in a really great location for not much money. The rental yield was quite low. So I can remember we were renting probably for $260, $280 a week back then. So that has caught up. The rental yield has caught up to where we're at there as well. We're back up to 75 houses now, if anyone's keen to know. 75 houses on the market in Devonport this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of still seeing, from the sounds of what you're saying, just looking at the metrics at a very high level, it sort of sees that the market isn't necessarily dead. Like, it's not like nowhere near like a Perth or Adelaide to some extent, or even Brisbane kind of booming. But yeah, there's kind of, if you can sort of spot an opportunity, a motivated seller, and that's probably another question I have is, are you seeing many? Not that we want to prey on sort of desperate sellers, but are there many motivated sellers who, I suppose, they have a problem that needs to be solved, and if somebody can solve that problem, are you seeing much of that, or people that are just happy to hold out for a price?
I love that question because everyone knows as a real estate agent, as a sales agent, the most important thing you can do is get the listing in the first place, right? You've got nothing to sell if you haven't got a listing. So when you're sitting in the lounge room, and I'll be Tom Panos if you like, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, what is your price expectation, or what are we going to be doing here? That's where the important conversations have to happen. I'm sure there are vendors out there that really need to sell and have got a bit of pressure on. I still would like to think in my business the way that we do it is still going to get the best result for the vendor anyway. But I am seeing on some of the social media marketing that's being done, motivated vendor make an offer. So there must be some of that happening in our market. But I think it's probably just been overpriced in the first instance. Either vendor expectation or the agent has overappraised.
I love when they say that wording, motivated seller, motivated vendor. It's like motivated to sell for a record price. I mean, yeah, of course I'm motivated to sell for a really, really good price. But I'm not motivated. That's what I think. I'm like, oh, well, who's not motivated to sell for a cracking price? I mean, yeah.
That's right. I mean, let's just be fair. You know, I really want to work hard for my vendors, for my owners. I want to get them the best result. But let's be fair to everybody and give them all the chance. Put it on the market at the price it should be on and go for it. Because no one wants to be sitting there in 6 months' time going, why haven't I sold? And I've already done 3 price drops. And if you are a motivated vendor, that must just be soul crushing, you know, to still be sitting there at that stage. But yeah, I think there is maybe a little bit of it happening, but I can't quite pinpoint whether it's a pain problem or whether it's an over expectation problem.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, let's run our next sponsor, then we'll jump into like property management considerations for like, how should we think about Tasmania from a property management perspective, and then jump into questions. So if anyone has any questions, jump them into the comment box now, and we'll jump to them. But yeah, let's do it.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
Here we go.
And we're back. And shout out to, not too many people might not care about this, but shout out to Queensland fans. You're doing having a great game tonight. Thank you for showing up to the game.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
New South Wales up 20-0, so that's why I'm being a bit sarcastic.
20-0.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. All right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, property management considerations. So, if imagine we're a first time in Tassie, but we've got a decent portfolio around the country. What do I need to know about Tassie that's unique compared to other states?
I think probably the first thing, and this comes up a lot when we're selling properties, we'll put something on the market, we'll have an investor they'll contact us and say, can I have the Section 32?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that.
The unconditional exchange, I imagine.
We don't have that in Tassie.
There ain't no calling off?
There is now. There is a calling off period in the contract, absolutely. But you have to do all of your own due diligence. So in Tasmania, properties are sold, they can be sold as is, so we don't have to provide any information to you about the property at all. We don't even have to tell you like anything, nothing. Is that council approved? Well, you can check it out, that kind of stuff. So no Section 32, so be really aware that you'll have to do your own due diligence, and that's around easements or everything you want to know about the property. So it's not difficult to do. Your conveyancer will do that for you, but you've just got to structure the contract correctly as a buyer.
After the fact. The conveyancer will do it after you have it under contract.
Well, yeah, unless you put a due diligence clause in the contract. So you can put a due diligence clause in there, which will allow your conveyancer to do all those checks for you before the contract becomes unconditional.
Yeah. So my understanding is a standard contract, essentially, once it's executed signed by both parties, you don't then have a finance clause, or what, do you have things like that?
Yeah, so it can still be subject to finance, subject to sale if you need to do that as well. All those things can happen. But if you really are cautious about what you're purchasing and you want to do all those checks first, you can put a due diligence clause in there and get all those things done prior to it going unconditional. Now, when we were in a really hot market, if that was in a contract as a vendor, when I had 7 others to look at, I probably wouldn't have come anywhere near you. So just be aware of that in a multiple offer scenario, but also be cautious. To know what you're buying, do some research is what I would say there. Building inspection. So in Tasmania, it's not building and pest.
Because you don't have pests down there in Tassie, do you?
So we don't have termites that impact buildings, is what I would say. So the building inspectors will check for that stuff, but it's not a building and pest inspection. So that's something that comes up quite a bit as well.
Somebody told me that in Geelong, and I said we don't have termites in Geelong. I was like, I don't know. Like, can you just check for that anyway, please? Just for my own sanity. I want to.
I would never say never. I would never ever say never. Yeah. But they looked for foxes for how many years in Tassie too. So that's another story. There's no foxes in Tassie apparently. So the other thing is a deposit in Tasmania. I don't know whether everybody still thinks a 10% deposit. Whenever I'm drafting a contract, I'm dealing with somebody from the mainland. They want to give me 10%. Don't need that much because it just sits in my trust account here until settlement. I don't need that much. I do need a good deposit. Don't come at me with $500. That's probably not going to cut it. Right? Give me a good.
All the deposit needs to be for any state. For anybody that needs to know, needs to cover the agent's commission. That is all the deposit needs to be. So do your calculation.
Why would that be, Joe? Why would that be?
I don't know why that would be.
I'm not working for free. I mean, come on.
That's the number that I've kind of worked out that works there. So it's a good point though, because like if you are trying to do like a smaller deposit and you're going to do a long settlement, and you're putting down 10%, you're putting down $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, it's exactly that. Like the trust account is going to get no interest. It's got no benefit to anybody. And it could be offsetting your mortgage. And you just need to tell the agent that and communicate it. Like, great, I've got a $12,000 deposit here. Well, why is it so low? Well, because that's 7% interest right now. So I want my I want to offset that. What do you think?
Oftentimes,
communicate.
Yeah. Oftentimes when an agent asks me that question, I'm like, oh, it's because I figured out roughly how much your commission is, and then we get usually I get a little chuckle. And depending on what sort of mood somebody's in, sometimes I get a little bit of I can tell they're groaning on the other end of the phone sometimes. But no, yeah. And the other thing that Joe's hit on there, and Mel has as well, is it really communicate and understand what the vendor is after, because if they need to go and purchase somewhere else, and that's potentially money they may need to go and buy, they think they need a 10% as well. So they may, another thing that might be appealing is, yes, I'm not saying to go and do this, speak to your conveyancer, seek the proper advice, but consider if you may release that deposit. I'm not saying do that, because go and seek appropriate advice, but because that is a risk ultimately, that if you don't, if for whatever reason thing doesn't go through, you need to chase that money. But yeah, consider the circumstances of the vendor if they're going to need that 10%.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of recent changes in our sales contracts. You mentioned the cooling off period. We do have that. That's been in for a little while. So don't be scared to use a cooling off period. Again, if you're in a multiple offer scenario though. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry. Yeah, so how much is it to terminate under the cooling off?
You've got 3 days.
And what's the penalty?
None.
Oh, great. Okay. It's like South Australia. So just for other people's knowledge, New South Wales has a cooling off period. Victoria has a cooling off. Queensland has a cooling off. But you'll generally pay 0.2 or 0.25% of the purchase price to cool off. So that's like $1,000 to $3,000 depending on the purchase. Well, $800 to $3,000, which is why you have these pest and building clauses and stuff in the contract. But in WA, there's no cooling off period. But in South Australia, you can terminate under cooling off, and there's legally it's $100, but no one ever takes it. They just say, okay, have a good day, see you later, which makes it interesting for a negotiation. So do you ever find yourself in situations where people will go under contract, have their pest and building done, or maybe like an inspection done, and be like, actually, no, I wanted it at, I loved it at 500. Now that I've spent more time, I wanted it at 480. Does that come up often now because of this new cooling off period?
No, it doesn't.
We haven't
probably the biggest issue we've got around, probably the biggest issue we've got around that is, and I'm starting to see this a bit more in the building inspections, is it's meant to be structural defects in a building inspection, okay? But they'll come back and it's an older house, it's 50, 60 years old. There's going to be things, and the builders pointed them out in the inspection. Sometimes we'll get purchasers come back and say, well, all of this added up means I'm over the defect limit. Now, in my contract, so the defect limit on a building inspection is the building inspection's there, you've got 14 days to do it. If the builder finds something more than 3% of the value of the property that's structurally wrong with it, you can end the contract or renegotiate.
Very frustrating.
Usually we renegotiate. Very rarely have I had a complete failure of contract on that. It's usually a renegotiation. Okay, there's something wrong with the bathroom that's going to cost $15,000 to fix. We'll just knock it off the price and continue with the contract. That's okay. But I am starting to see people getting to the point of, well, all of these little things added up is $15,000. I'm like, no. Go and get some advice. That's you need to go and speak to your solicitor.
Yeah. We ain't paying it. The vendor ain't paying it. You've also got to do your due diligence, right? Like it's not, you can't go to a vendor and walk in and say the bathtub's cracked. Yes, you did the inspection. You saw that the bathtub is cracked, and you bought it based on the bathtub being cracked. Yeah. What you can do as an agent, as a investor, is not point all of these things out when you're doing the inspection. I see it all the time as an investor. They're like, oh my gosh, there's a crack here. There's this, look at this. You've just made it very clear to the agent that you have seen every single problem that is there. When I walk through a property, cool. They're all. I've seen that. Okay, great. Now I understand. And then when you go back into a renegotiation, there is a little bit more that you haven't, oh, I wasn't aware of this. I didn't point it out. I didn't yell out, look under the sink. It's leaking, whatever. So there is a little bit of that to it as well. It's a bit of a don't point out everything.
It's like the for sale by owners who like to tell everybody all the bad points about their house rather than the good points.
It's got a great location, but man, I can't get rid of that smell. I don't know what it is, but anyway, that's why I'm leaving. In fact, I just I don't know how to get rid of it. Anyway,
yeah, that's funny. That's funny, isn't it? The other change we've had in contracts is when you purchase a property that is tenanted, you do get a copy of the lease with the sale contract. Mm-hmm. So you're no longer relying on somebody telling you what the rent is and what the lease end date is. You get that information on the lease. So that's only a fairly new thing that we've got happening here.
Crazy. I can imagine how many issues that would cause when an agent says, yeah, it's 450 and it ends on the 7th of, July. Well, it doesn't. It ends July 2025. And it's $100 less. Yeah. Okay.
I know, obviously watch those long leases. I don't know why you would put a tenant on a long lease. It's not something I've ever understood. 12 months is long enough. You can raise rent every 12 months. Why would you put them on any longer than that?
Can you raise rent? So recently in Queensland, you're not able to increase your rent over 12 months. What I found very interesting, and I need to get some clarity on that, is maybe I won't talk about it, but you can't raise your. I haven't got an answer. I don't know, so I'm not gonna yell it out. But you can't raise your rents in 12 months. Can you do a 6 months lease and then raise your rent, and then a 6 months lease and raise your rent and a 6 month lease and keep doing it that way? No, it's a 12 month.
No. So you can only raise the rent once every 12 months. So the way we do it here is if we don't know the tenant, brand new tenant to us, we've never met them, they'll get a 6 month lease to start off with. Do they like living there? Are they the right tenant for the property? Because we still do have no grounds eviction end of lease in Tasmania as well. So at the end of that 6 months, if it's not working out, then, that's okay. End the lease and go again. But if they're staying, what we would do here is it's hard to predict what the rent's going to be in 6 months' time because the market is a little bit like that. We would probably put them on for another 6 months and give the tenant certainty that at that point, we'll be locking them in for 12 months if they want to stay longer. So
what's
just
no lease? What's the eviction?
So in Tasmania, you can still just end a lease at the end of lease and tenant moves out.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a lot of other states at the moment, Joe, Victoria, being led by Victoria, funnily enough, of course, good old Victoria. We love you down there, but yeah, interesting decisions. But yeah, even New South Wales as well. So no grounds eviction essentially means you can't just, you have to. I think they're looking to bring in New South Wales and potentially that it either has to be like you can't even not renew a lease because you're looking to potentially sell the property. That's one of the reasons that they might not allow you. So it literally would have to be a couple of reasons. One of them, I believe, would be that it's dangerous to live in. And I don't know. There's very limited scope to end the lease, so it just kind of locks a tenant in place, and it just makes it hard for landlords to be able to, to mutually sort of finish a tenancy relationship.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, watch this space because there's a bit of legislation change happening everywhere. Actually, I had a question for you guys. Can I ask it?
Definitely.
Go on. Anyone that's got any other questions, load them up as well, and we'll hit them. What's
so at the moment, there's movement around change to the Residential Tenancy Act, in particular around pets in rental properties. So in Tasmania, you can still say no. You can advertise no pets, and you can say no to pets. I'm wondering if for investors, if this legislation does change, and we have some investors that go, I just don't want that and I'm out, and we've suddenly got some properties coming on the market because investors don't want that legislation change. In other states where there was major legislation change, did that create that opportunity for investors where existing owners just went, I'm out, I'm done? And did we get some influx of properties on the market, like, is that going? I'm just wondering if we should predict whether or not that's going to happen in Tassie if we get this legislation change.
What are your thoughts, Joe? What do you want me to go first?
Well, I mean, a prime example is Victoria, right?
Queensland.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic in Victoria. It's the reason why it didn't grow so much is because it was so aggressive. Like over COVID, Victoria just didn't pump up like as much as other states because they made it so very difficult, and they're just making it so much harder. I did a post about this the other day about what Victoria is doing to its landlords, and it hasn't been good. All it's done is created 15,000 less dwellings available for rentals. So my thoughts are is any kind of tenancy law change is not good for an investor market. If the market's made up of owner occupiers, it doesn't really matter, right? But in investor market, it's never good over the short term because it's going to get more supply. So Victoria right now, it's one of those markets that's so devalued. Exactly like, I don't know if you were saying this before the show, Jeff, but you're saying it's the second biggest economy per capita. And you can buy it, and the median house price, Brisbane has a higher median house price than Queensland. It creates like it's becoming valuable because so many people have left. There's more opportunity there. So in the short term, it suffered during COVID because of these silly things. Like you can't have a pet. You can't. Your tenant can put something like this up, smash a hole in the wall, patch it up themselves, put some white paint over the top of it, and oh, well, no, that's an absolutely fine job. No, it's not. It looks terrible because the white paint that you have is not the white paint that I have. No, I painted it white. And it becomes a bit of a difficulty. But I don't think that if it's just legislation about pets, that's really going to do too much. The pets, for me as an investor, makes hardly a consideration. Like
me too. I'm of the same opinion as you. I couldn't care less if someone's got a pet or not. I've got a dog who was always going to be outside.
Especially Tasmania as well. Like there's so much land available. Like you're not on a 200 square meter block. You're on a 500, 800 square meter block that is going to have a pet, and they're not going to tear the place up. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll watch that one with interest because there is some discussion around, that will. And look, the Residential Tenancy Union is pushing for further developments in our Tenancy Act. Whether or not that gets off the ground, who knows? We may need another election for that to hit the ground.
And is the rental crisis that bad? Because a lot of this is driven by how unavailable stock is, right? Like that's why Queensland and South Australia, you can create granny flats in Victoria because the rental crisis is large there, and they need more protection. But I don't think that the rental crisis is not as crazy in Tasmania, is it? Like I know, like is there a rental crisis in Tasmania?
There has been, there has been. Sometimes we've had, in Devonport we would have maybe. I could check the stats, but there would maybe 30 properties available for rent this week in Devonport, and we've been as low as 2 or 3 available.
Wow.
So tenants have definitely got more choice, but it's the affordability factor. But there's definitely discussion around at the moment around if legislation does change in whatever format, whatever they're trying to do here, that there will be investors that go, nah, I'm out. That might be an opportunity for other people to come in and take them because we've still got a need for housing.
Yeah,
we've still got that.
Yeah, well, it might be. It might be the nail in the coffin for those investors. But still, I mean, the rental yield as prices start to shift up in a lot of other markets. Like the rental yield in WA is becoming quite challenging now. We were buying 6%, 5.5% not too long ago, and now it's nowhere near. It's very, very challenging to get. Yes, the rents are going strong. Yes, things are going well. Yes, the prices are moving, but as prices keep pushing up, rents do not keep up, which compresses the yield and then makes places more unaffordable and less attractive because it's already had that growth. So if you can then shift into a market that hasn't, and it just depends on the investment strategy as well. How long are you going to be investing for? What's your horizon? Like I was chatting with someone. He's like, yeah, I need to buy 5 properties in the next 12 months because of my lifestyle, my job, my money, my situation. And he's like, I need to diversify now. So I need to buy in multiple areas. So everyone's situation is completely different.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
what I was going to say, even Townsville as well. Like Townsville's starting to see crazy price growth, which is and you've already got sort of the Townsville tax, some people call it, which is where the insurance and council rates, which are a consideration. What on that point, interestingly, because I don't know too much about it. What is the sort of, are there any exorbitant sort of fees for council rates or anything like that in Devonport or parts of Tassie?
Yeah,
no, it's not too bad. In Devonport, rates, I don't know, let's average it out at 2,000. You may not be paying that much per annum.
Annually.
Yeah. Water rates, everything's going up because cost of living is going up, but around about $1,000, maybe a little bit more per annum as well. Tenants obviously pay the water usage. That's all pretty standard across the board. Insurances, that's probably a really important point. A few years back, we had some flooding in Latrobe, pretty major flooding, and they've mitigated that now and put flood levy in and done all sorts of stuff. But the insurances did kind of skyrocket. So do your due diligence. Latrobe's, I'm sure it's fine now. We've got all the protections in place, but just do your due diligence. Ask the agent. We have to be transparent.
The thing I like to do, or the thing that I sort of have picked up probably for over the years, is actually jumping on. You can jump on Allianz. I'm not saying that you should go with those guys, but that's just the first one that come up at the top of Google. And you can jump in, punch in all the details, and again, if you don't know those or not, they're not 100% correct, it can change. But that can actually give you some indication, because I did it for a property the other day where I was a little bit concerned. It wasn't in a flood zone, but I just thought, you know what, like, just because it's not, the insurance company might be concerned, and they might, because of that area and the stigma, they might have concerns. So I did that, and I was like, well, it's actually less than what I'm paying. So I'm like, oh, geez, okay. That's reassuring to some degree, assuming I've entered all the correct information. I'm not saying you should rely on a gospel truth, but
cross-reference it all. Like Suncorp as well has a great online platform where you can, in a couple of clicks, find out how much the insurance is. One of the big things that's hot topic right now is land tax in Victoria, land tax in Queensland. What's the
New South Wales as well?
New South Wales? It's all there. What's the Tasmania version? How's that looking?
No, yeah, we've got it. You will have that. Sorry. There's a bit of talk about land tax at the moment around bringing the short-term accommodation back into the long-term rental market and some relief there. So that's interesting. What about all the rest of us that don't have short-term accommodation, have been providing housing for much longer than that? I don't know. I'll let the other people sort that out. I'll let the media run with that. But yeah, there is land tax. But I guess my rule of thought around any of that is, with any investing there's risk, and with any investing there's going to be costs involved, right? But just make sure you know about it before you get hit with it. So get the advice that you need. There's plenty of calculators online. Everyone asks me, what's the stamp duty when I purchase in Tasmania? Jump online, find out for yourself. There's a calculator right there. What land tax am I going to pay? Go and find it out. Just don't get caught with surprises. Don't think that, don't take someone's word for it. Find out your own information, get the proper advice. But as far as rates and water, look, it's not that bad. I don't feel.
That's nothing crazy. I mean, like Townsville, for instance, and Northern Queensland, Cairns is like 2,000 per 6 months. So anyone that's investing there has to have that as a consideration. It's not the end of the world. It's just a tax that you need to pay. And does it make the ROI? And are you going to get the capital growth to make it worthwhile? That's why we're all buying, right? That's why we're all buying at 7% interest rates. 6.5% interest rates is because of the capital growth value that we're going to eventually get, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to buy a house. If you don't think it's going to grow, there's no reason to buy it, because it doesn't stack up.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Speaking about insurances, just watch your strata stuff as well. So in Tasmania, there's lots of strata, not a lot of active body corporates. So watch that. Do your due diligence there as well. In the sales contracts
now. What does that mean?
So there's a body corporate in place, but it's not active. So there's no body corporate fees.
No funds, no money in there.
So what happens when something happens on the common ground? What happens with insurances if something happens on the common ground? What are we going to do about this fence that everybody's sharing with the next door neighbour? Again, I would just, word of caution, Everybody always says, "Oh, what's the body corporate fees?" Well, there's no active body corporate. Oh, yay! I'm like, maybe you want a body corporate. So
just a couple of bucks.
just make some really wise decisions about that as well. It always comes up, and people don't use the right terminology either. So just make sure you're asking the right questions.
Well, you don't have to disclose it, so it's no need. So asking the right questions become very, very important. Sinking funds and all of how much money have they got to spend. Let's jump into questions, Jeff. Are there any questions anyone's kind of got in and around?
There's been a couple come through on locations, and I was doing some research on, because everybody's like, oh, Tasmania, Hobart, and I looked at, we can, I don't know, do you want to stumble through it, Joe, or should we just say focus on Devonport and surrounds? What do you reckon? Are you comfortable with Hobart, Mel, or?
Well, I would say there are other areas in Tasmania besides Hobart.
There definitely is, yeah. Well, because if we bring this, let's bring it up anyway, and I can sort of,
with no knowledge of the Tasmanian property market, Hobart would be the obvious starting point. Can we cover some suburbs in Hobart to look at between $400,000 and $600,000? Go check them all out. You just jump on real estate. You do it.
Yeah, I was looking through suburb trends or suburbs.
You're going to say Moona? Moona and Glenorchy are interesting.
Glenorchy's in there because our famous Bridgewater and Risdon Vale. I would say be very cautious of those areas, because we spoke about, have a look at the start of so Risdon's where that prison is, I believe. So it's where the maximum
where Martin Bryant is.
Yeah. So just I mean, I would say with that sort of budget, $400,000 to $600,000, you just have to be very cautious of focusing only on Hobart, because I just don't know that if you're going to buy, you just have to be prepared. You need to get two things. You need to get a really good property manager, one who's kind of comfortable with handling potentially harder areas to manage tenants in, or quality of tenants, and no disrespect to those tenants, but it's just more affordable. So, and the second one is, are you comfortable with taking on if you get damage to a property? If you're okay with that, if you're okay with doing a bit of work on a property, because that's the areas, the lower socioeconomic, and no disregard to those, but yeah, those are the kind of two considerations if that's your budget. Yeah, but Glenorchy did come up. But what are your thoughts anyway, Mel?
Look, there's definitely some opportunities down in Hobart still in that price point. I really liked your comment about finding the right property manager to look after that. I mean, there's lots around. There's lots of really good operators around as well. Something that I find happens a little bit in Tasmania is property managers probably spread themselves a little bit too thin, as in, they're looking after properties here geographically. Yeah. So if you're going to be looking at that, just make sure that the property manager you're choosing is actually close to the area. We drive past our rental properties every day and just kind of, poke our head in and see what's going on. Just make sure that is my one.
That's a great question. So what kind of radius do you work within? Because if it's like, I work in Bridgewater and Devonport, it's like, it's a big radius. When are you ever going to see my property? Am I going to get the attention I deserve? Where's your office space? Where's my property? That's actually a really good point.
Oh, I could give you all the questions you need to ask a property manager before you engage with them. But anyway, that's another session, I reckon.
What are the
good ones? What are the core ones?
So I would be asking, and this is because I've been in it now for quite some time. My first question would be the geographical area. Second question would be, how many properties are you managing, and how many property managers do you have managing those?
Yeah, and what's the kind of ideal answer? What do we want to be looking for?
Okay, so 50-kilometre radius is more than enough. In Tassie, because we're Tasmanians, we don't like to travel more than half an hour to do anything. That's just who we are. So that's enough. In our office, we won't let our property managers manage more than 100, and I think that's probably bordering on too many because of our geographical area as well. It's just we need more time to get to places. It's just the way it goes. Also, managing the maintenance on those can be a bit tricky. That's another point to think about. As well, I'd be asking about, this is probably really getting to tin tax, but I would probably be asking around how long have your staff been with you? What's your staff turnover? Because that's the sign of something not quite right if you've got excessive staff turnover in your team. So that's another really great question. So everybody always asks about fees. What are your fees? What are your fees? And that's really important. I know that. We're about yield and we're about, keeping those costs down.
Comments come out straight away.
There's one. I'll come to that in a minute. Definitely. I'll give you my pricing because I'm very transparent. But just look at the other things. Make sure you're getting your inspections when you're meant to be getting them. Ask them what their arrears are today, because it's really easy to put something on social media when your arrears are at nothing for one day. But what are they going to be like tomorrow or next week? It's really easy to push all your marketing into your social media about all the great stuff. But we all know that things can happen in property management. We all know that people's lives can change in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So what that's actually a really good question that the person's asked about fees. Like what should we be expecting? Because in like WA, for instance, it's like 8-9% for property management. Am I frozen? In Victoria, it's I got property management fee. So I just bought a property in Victoria, and the fee was 4.5% from a property management perspective. But I think we lost Mel. So it's amazing how different. It's funny how the same job, exact same job, has completely different fees associated with it.
I tell you the thing that interests me though, Joe, is that as rents have increased in WA, and Ash Goodchild sort of mentioned this probably 12, 18 months ago. She said because as it's increased, they haven't compressed the amount, but I suppose that's then to maybe playing catch up. Whereas in Victoria, or actually having said that, even the rents in Victoria, they aren't super, because even in Queensland though, you're looking at sort of 6%. I mean, they may have sort of come back a little bit.
But I mean, they're just kind of, I guess in WA, they're kind of like, the sun is shining, and everyone's, it's kind of like everyone's charging 8%, 9%. So I'll just charge 8-9%. But also like the fee is so little for property management. Like it's definitely a consideration, and don't go overpaying doing stupid things. But when you've got a good property manager, the problem with property management is when you've got a great property and a great property manager in place, it feels like they're doing absolutely nothing, and the property is just humming along beautifully. But it's when you have a bad property manager or a bad tenant or something like that where it goes downhill. So you just have to think about it a little bit more. And choose someone that's good. And that rule of like how many 100 listings per property manager is a great rule for generally overall.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Joe? So Mel's just said her internet's dropped out, and I agree with your points there about. I mean, the numbers. I mean, I think once you start to get into 150, it starts getting a bit ridiculous. But we'll give her a couple of minutes, otherwise, because I'm mindful it's getting roughly towards the end. I wanted to give Mel an opportunity to tell people where to find it. We can do a little bit of a segment on that. But what questions do people have for Joe and myself? Let's see.
Well, we got a question here. I can answer for Mel. Her PM here. Watch the extras on top of the weekly. What does that mean?
What's the extras on top of the weekly? So what that means is you talk about the sundries and all those kind of add-ons, or
admin
sort
fees and project fee.
They can really add up. Yeah,
solid.
So, Joe, I wanted to ask you. We'll throw one question at us, and if Mel's not back, then we'll probably finish it up. But if anybody has any burning questions they want to ask Joe or myself, now's your time. We don't often get the airwaves, Joe or you, Joe, right? But what do you think? What do you feel? So we're pretty much halfway through 2024, and I can go first because I thought about this a little bit. What do you think about the property market for the last? I know we love crystal balling here on the show. But what do you reckon about what the back half's going to hold for property around the country, around Australia?
What do you reckon, mate? What do you reckon? Give an answer.
Saved by the Mel.
Now I don't know what you've been talking about.
Nah, that's all right. We were just spitballing about sort of fees and about the questions, and then we said, well, let's throw it to the audience what questions they want to ask us. And then I said, well, what does 2020, the rest of 2024 hold for property around the grounds? And I tend to think that unless we see, I see more of the same continuing in. I mean, you don't need to be a guru or rocket science to work this out. 6 months from now, 3 years from now, maybe a different story. But I think WA, same old, until supply changes. It's supply and demand over there. It's just too hard to find a property. South Australia has surprised me a little bit. I've been keeping an eye on the prices down, at least down south. I'm not tracking the north as much. And Queensland, like West, I saw one the other day, and yes, it was a fantastic agent, $700K in Crestmead. So yes, it was a nicely renovated property, but that's you could pick something up 18 months ago for 500 in Crestmead.
Yeah, the exact same thing. Yeah.
Victoria, I don't see much changing for the next 6 months at least.
Yeah. So, what do you think for Tasmania, Mel? For around the grounds, where do you see kind of prices and things in your neck of the woods and things for Tassie?
Sale prices, because I did miss what you were talking about.
Yeah. That's what we're talking roughly.
I think what we'll see is some expectations coming back into line with the market. So what I'm saying is, everybody just has to say this is where the market's at. Do I think we're going to see a reduction in prices? I don't see that, and Tassie generally doesn't do that, and you can see it on the graphs. And I know that past performance is no indicator of future performance. That's the financial planner coming out of me there, isn't it, guys? No guarantees. Tassie goes up, then we level out. We could have a little couple of corrections, and we've experienced that in the last probably 3 months. But we did have an election in March, so that could have impacted some of that. So I just think we'll probably settle down for a bit. Then we'll have to catch up to the rest of Australia again at some point. We're always on the catch up, I feel.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, it has been the past 10 years the strongest performing property market in Australia. So you can't discount it, and it's not fair. And this is the thing where it's like, oh, is Tasmania the place to buy? No, absolutely not. You're not buying Tasmania though. You're buying a house in a state, in a region, in a town. In Australia somewhere. Like, is Australia the best place to buy? Like, no, it's somewhere. It's an individual house. So you can't just say, no, let's go buy Hobart. No, it doesn't work that way. Let's go buy Devonport. No, there are pockets within pockets. And like what we're alluding to, the top of the market is probably not where you want to be putting your capital, but the bottom of the market, where the affordability is, where people, everyday Australians are buying, that's looking pretty opportunistic as well.
Well, it's like saying like battery points in Hobart versus something like Risdon. Like you're chalk and cheese those particular markets. Like you're not like I'm being deliberately sort of cherry picking sort of two very distinct markets or pockets of Hobart. So that's to illuminate or allude to Joe's point. You're not buying Hobart. You're buying the house in that suburb. So
So a bit like the tourists that come to Tasmania, don't get off the ship and turn left. Right? Look at the northwest coast. We've got some really good opportunities all along the northwest coast. I'm not just talking about Devonport. I'm talking about Burnie, Somerset, Wynyard, all the way through Stanley, Smithton. There's opportunities here everywhere. Don't just think about Launceston and Hobart or the east coast even. The east coast, some of the numbers coming out of the east coast of Tasmania would blow your mind if you really had a look at them. Go back and have a look.
Is there any particular parts that you're comfortable sharing or
have a look at anywhere around St Helens, some of those numbers.
Coles
4 Mile Creek, a few places like that down there. Just amazing properties and amazing locations. Would I buy a rental property there? Not sure. I'd have to give it a bit more thought, but it's way down on the east coast of Tasmania. You can't just pick a point, like Joe just said, or Jeff just said. You can't just pick a point and say, is Tassie a good thing? Check us out on the northwest coast. We've got really great operators on the northwest coast looking after your properties as well. So,
well, that's the most important thing as well. Is it's getting dedicated people that are good at what they do. So that sounds like what after this conversation, I feel like you very much understand your neck of the woods. Like, how do people learn more about Melissa and what you guys do? How can we check you out a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I'm contactable all the time. I'm still in the office now, and that's pretty normal to be here at this time of night. But look, just Google me, LJ Hooker Devonport. You'll find one of my staff. We've only got mobile phones in this office, so someone will either answer or you can leave a message, send a text. That's probably the easiest way to do it. We're pretty approachable. I have got somebody in my office who is working towards becoming a buyer relationship manager. So that's not a buyer's agent. Just need to be really clear about that. We are not going to be charging people for that in a buyer's agent sense, because we don't have a lot of buyer's agents here on the Northwest Coast. We deal with some from interstate, and they're great and they give us lots of opportunities. But we're going to have someone here in the office whose sole role will be to keep in contact with buyers. There's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there, let's talk about this. So if you're actually really serious about investing on the Northwest Coast, you need to engage with somebody like that, and we'll have that person in our office within a couple of weeks ready to help you out. Sure. Once you get to the point of, yes, I'm ready to purchase, the sales agents will step in and take on that role for you. But in the initial stages of let's just start looking at some properties, we've got someone here that can help you with that.
So would you say that person would have sort of upcoming properties coming on and be able to talk to that? Is it like a pre-market sort of person, or not so much?
I love that question. There'll be a little bit of pre-market in there. We don't do a lot of pre-market or sneak peeks in our office for the obvious reason that we work for the vendor. There are agents that will do. You can find out those people pretty easily. Just watch the Facebook pages. There are agents out there who are selling off market regularly. I don't believe that's in the best interest of the vendor, so we don't do that. But what we do is give a bit of a heads up about our upcoming properties. Doesn't mean we're going to sell them. You just get to start your due diligence a bit quicker. So there is that.
That's a great way.
The expectation is you'll let me then talk to you about managing your property. So just, caveat, if you're going to deal and work with that person in my office, once you've bought, whether it's with us or with another agency, I'm going to be knocking on your door saying, now you need to listen to my property management spiel. So that's going to be your trade-off. But at least you'll have someone here on the ground looking out for opportunities for you.
It's actually a really good point for investors themselves, is to have that consideration point around, like Melissa, you're the director of LJ Hooker. That means you care about the entire business, not just sales, not just property management. You're there to look after a sale, but you're also there to look after the property management. So you, as an investor, saying, you know what, not that it's going to help, obviously good ethical agents, it's not going to make a difference. But being able to say, great, we've got, can you help us with the property management? Everything's already connected. But also, there is opportunity of like, great, it's going to be smooth. It's going to be an easy settlement, all that kind of stuff. And there may be, I don't know, dodgy agents, terrible agents. There is definitely, you're going to get this listing. And they're going to make the price a little bit better for you, unfortunately. But anyway, that's not what you do, obviously. But Melissa, this has been an awesome session. This has given us a lot more context to a lot of Tasmania, because a lot of people don't know too much about it, but also what's going on up north, because Hobart gets a lot of, love and support and a little bit of Launceston. But what else is there? What else is out there? And Devonport, East Devonport sounds like a little interesting opportunity, a little hotspot that might be a little undervalued for what it is.
No, there's plenty more. Just make contact, give me a ring, I'll talk to you. Someone's asked about statement fees and admin fees and lease renewal fees over there too. I just want to let you know I don't have those.
You got zero of them. Yeah, no, that's what we were covering off on the. We're like, what? Because one of the PMs here jumped in and said, I can add to.
Hello, PMs. That's my awesome PM team. How amazing. See,
they're dedicated. That's just got bloody 9:30 at night. They're listening to you talk about property investing. So that's love it, Mel. So yeah, jump on LJ Hooker Devonport and jump on the call and let's make it happen. Let's go buy a property.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's
Thanks,
all
Mel.
go
Really
and buy a property.
Yeah, I really appreciate you jumping on, sharing your knowledge about and passion for Northwest Tassie.
I am pretty passionate. I love it. Yeah, I'd love to share this really special place with lots of people. So not everyone might agree with that. We do sometimes do the old stop telling people about Tassie thing. But yeah, we're really, really, really lucky to live where we live and work with the people that we work with.
Yeah, great. All right. Let's go, as Joe said, let's go buy a property maybe in Tassie.
Maybe. See you later. Have a good one.
See you guys.
Bye.